slightly different location. In fact, we've reversed. I'm where the camera is, you're where I normally am. But this will be the last possible chance I get to talk to you this week, conventional week that is, if you're seeing this on Friday, because tomorrow, Saturday, I will be travelling on, going on to Bangalore, the main branch monastery, ready for, that'll be in the afternoon, but in the morning it's day before Uposatha, so head shaving day, robe washing day, the usual routine prior to the full moon of October Uposatha and the end of this year's 2023's Vasa, 2566 in the Buddhist era. I think, I'm never sure whether it's 66 or 67 because in different countries they change the date at different times of the year. I think in our tradition it's at the Vesak, this is the full moon in May, that the year changes over, which would make this year already 2567. But the tax discs, or equivalent of, that they have in the motor vehicles in Thailand, they say 2567, which makes me think that it is coming up, as in that's when their tax expires on their motor vehicles. It's roughly around then, but for us Westerners it's 2023. And what an interesting year it has been. But that I will talk about more on my travels, during my travels, and once I arrive in Sri Lanka and have somehow managed to procure a SIM card, or possibly two. One does tend to need more than one in these different countries in order to be able to find some internet, but they're very much cheaper. The cheapest data you can get is in Sri Lanka, I understand, and India, places like this. So it's just getting the SIM cards is quite difficult in India. But in Sri Lanka apparently it's quite easy at the airport, so there I can do that in order that I can continue to talk to you about my experiences as a Buddhist monk living here, I'll just say in Asia. Can't even say Southeast Asia now because I've moved around a little bit, I'm just called it Asia. But mainly in India and Thailand. So that brings me on to these questions, some questions I've had. Let me start with a nice easy one, and at the same time let me check the time. Yes, it's the same as it says on the question. Right. How many years have you been a monk? 3. I ordained 3 years ago here in India, but prior to that I was an 8 precept upasaka, so I was living on the 8 precepts rather than just 5 for 5 years. Whilst in training, really, between Buddhist monasteries in England and Thailand, leading up to ordination. Then there were some complications with regards to, I had family commitments with the dying of my father, his illness and subsequent death, and then COVID came along, which was another spanner in the works. But I got around it and ended up in India 3 years ago, where I ordained as a Samanera, which I was for a year, and then I've now been a Bhikkhu for 2, a fully ordained Buddhist monk. So 3 years really as a monk, but it's 8 years since I haven't had anything to eat after midday, because that's of course the 6th precept that comes after the 5. The 5 precepts for lay people are quite simple: no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, or the taking of intoxicants. And when you go to live in a monastery, or stay in a monastery even for a day, you have to refrain from eating after midday. That's better. And you don't have any entertainment, so it's phones off time. And beautification, perfume, hairdos and jewellery and all of that stuff goes out the window. We don't The third precept changes to celibacy, so no sexual activity, and the eighth precept is you don't laze around in luxurious furniture. It's actually specifically don't sleep in a high luxurious bed, but I kind of apply that to lazing around on the sofa or big comfy chairs also. So you just make your life a lot more simple, more dedicated, directed and focused on practice, meditation primarily. That's the purpose of these additional 3 precepts, to support the structure of one's day, make it easier to practice meditation, no worrying about food in the afternoon, and you take away some of the distraction by getting rid of the phones and the entertainment and this kind of thing. So really I feel that I've been living as a monk for 8 years, because nothing much changed when I became ordained, because I was already, although only officially on 8 precepts, apart from the 10th precept, because when it becomes 10 precepts, the 7th precept splits from entertainment and beautification into 2 precepts. So really the 8 precepts is 9, because it encompasses those 2 together. And the 10th precept is we renounce the use of money. So I wasn't able to do that until I did become a monk in these robes, and was able to then go on alms round and hopefully receive food offerings, dana, in that respect, which you wouldn't expect to receive in ordinary clothing, and you wouldn't wear these robes unless you were ordained as a monk properly, or you were a little I don't know, crazy because there's nothing practical or that comfortable about them. They are our way of renouncing those comforts of ordinary clothes and pockets and jeans and t-shirts and easily managed items of attire. These are a bit cumbersome. They're not very, you might have got used to this colour and quite like it now. I have, but I mean, when you think about it, what it is, these robes are the colour of dung water. This is how the Buddha described it. So when you see some cow dung, as he would have in India at the time, floating around in some water or water around it, it goes this kind of colour. And very possibly this is how they created this colour and dyed the white cloth after it had been cleaned in the first instance out of a load of old dung. But it's now from the heart fruit of the jackfruit tree, and this is traditionally what we do the day before Riposta. I haven't been able to do that here because we couldn't get access to the wood or the way of boiling it up, so my robes have gone a bit lighter I think now, and maybe I'll find some jackfruit dye or trees in my travels in Sri Lanka. So that's how long I've been a monk for. I'm sure I think I've answered that one before many times, but it's always good to remind myself, because each time I answer it, of course, I've been a monk for a little bit longer. Right, let me find a good place to start with these questions. Okay, this is more a comment, or you could close your eyes and pray. So I'm not sure what that comment was in relation to. You could close your eyes and meditate, I would say. I don't pray because I don't have anyone to pray to. And I can pray just means ask. But in the context you're using this word pray, it's praying for forgiveness, praying for all to be well, praying for health, praying for success to a God, a higher being. As Buddhists, we don't do that. We may close our eyes and we may meditate and we may practice chanting, for instance, which is not, again, it's not praying, it's not saying prayers, it's not like hymns. In fact, some hymns are not prayers either. They are reflections on Jesus' teachings, whereas chanting is reflections on the teachings of the Buddha, and that is it. They also are wishing other people from our own hearts well and happiness and well-being, from one being to another. But it's not actually asking for somewhere else. So I would, in this situation, say, well, close your eyes and meditate. I did reply and say, does it work? I ask people this question. I'm open to all kinds of ideas and answers. If praying works, continue to do it. That's what I'll say, because something's happening that's positive. So that's good, as long as you're praying for wholesome things. As far as I do understand, even life, like Phra Dan, is sankhara, which creates vijnana, something like illusion interpreted by individuals. Something like illusion interprets by individuals as reality. So I'm not quite sure what this comment is, but essentially sankhara is everything. Vijnana is these are the khandhas we're talking about, the aggregates, the five, what we are made up of. Sankhara is everything, it's all conditioned things. Vijnana is our consciousness of those things, but when we understand all things to be subject to, so all sankhara, anicca, dukkha, anatta, so impermanent, unsatisfactory and out of our control, we can recognize the reality in those things. So there is a tendency for people who are of, let's say, for want of a better description, of a spiritual nature to say everything's an illusion, it's all a dream, nothing's reality, we're all one. Well, in fact, what I'm sitting on is real. What I was sitting on over there is also real and subject to anicca, eaten by termites. I think if I was to push my luck and sit on it for one more session, I might fall straight through. Hence, I've moved to this more solid thing, sankhara. It's real. It's here. I am vijnanaing it. I am consciously aware that I am sitting on it. So for the sake of convention, for the sake of practicality, for conversation, for explaining things, and for our own understanding of reality, it is better to keep it simple and think of things in that way. If you pick up a solid object, it's a solid object. Of course, technically speaking, it is not. It is made up of atoms and whatever is smaller than atoms all moving around. Glass, apparently, is a very slow moving liquid. I heard a remarkable statement, which I'm sure it has to be true, that a pane of glass, if it's been in a frame for long enough, apparently it settles down and gets thicker at the bottom than at the top because it's continually flowing. But for convention's sake, for simplicity's sake, we pick up a glass filled with water and drink the water as knowing it as liquid, and knowing, as far as we need to be aware at this moment in time, that the glass that contains it is solid, being that the reality of it is that they are the same. But do we need to confuse ourselves and lock ourselves in a cupboard because nothing is real and it's all a dream out there? No. We can experience what's going on, and this is vijnana. I'm not sure really what that whole subject was about really, but I said something. How do we get rid of well-entrenched sankharas? Oh, it's like a conversation, isn't it, going on? The negative anxiety ones. So, we don't try and get rid of anything. We use vijnana, conscious awareness, to be aware of those well-entrenched, as you're calling them, sankharas of anxiety. But why call them sankharas? Let's just say anxiety is an emotion. Now, you know you have this emotion of being anxious. Firstly, understand what the cause of that anxiety is. Appreciate that that cause of the anxiety is also a sankhara. It is subject to anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence. It will not always be there to cause this anxiety. Just knowing that will get rid of that entrenched emotion of anxiety. So again, keep it simple, and the answer is there. The answer is always there in anicca, dukkha, anatta if you're practicing sila, samadhi, panya. And those of you who have been watching these videos for a long time need no further explanation than that, because I do repeat this over and over again, because it is the very essence, the core teachings of the Buddha. In addition to the suffering and the end of suffering, how we arrive at that through this Noble Eightfold Path of Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Okay, this is a few questions from the same person, but they're quite, they're well related and flow well, so Well, I think so. I looked at them a long time ago now. How long after you let go of everything... Sorry. How long after you let go of everything took for you to get awake? Well, not specifically talking about myself, but for people, if you have let go of everything, you have no longer any attachment, you are awake. This is enlightenment, this is awakening. You have attained to the ultimate goal, which would result in freedom from suffering in this lifetime, because you have no attachment, you have let go. So, on a practical sense, if you're referring to just my renunciation, so moving out of a house into homelessness, getting rid of my clothes, wearing robes, and no longer using money, then that is just the very beginning of the practice. So I would say it's a long way to go before one reaches full awakening. That is, having let go officially of everything, not officially, actually to have no longer those ties, those fetters. The first fetters to let go of really are this personality view. So the understanding of anatta, the third of anicca, dukkha, anatta, not self. These persons that we think are ourselves are merely just results of the causes and conditions we have put in place. Vipaka, the results of karma, which is just actions of body, speech and mind. This is what forms this person sitting here now on this piece of wood. And he's a very different person that was sitting, say, in a big office chair in an office 20 odd years ago, doing whatever I did then. Looking very different, dressed very differently, behaving very differently. To all intents and purposes, a very different person. That was a result of the causes and conditions in place then. Then this renunciation period time comes along. So it's a good question. And then you begin the practice. But you don't have to give everything up to start letting go. You can start to understand anatta, this Sakkaya Ditthi, personality view, which is the first of the three fetters we need to let go of to step into the stream entry, to become Sotapanna, the first stage of enlightenment. Secondly, rites and rituals. This idea of praying for help, praying for your salvation, praying for enlightenment to a higher being. This is rites and rituals. If you consider the pujas, the devotional practices in Buddhism as something you have to do in order for you to succeed, for your ancestors to have a happy rebirth, then this is rites and rituals. If you understand them as reminders, as practical actions that you are performing in order to mindfully address your emotions, your desires, and see them in the reality to which they are, manifesting them within yourself, and be able to recognize through those devotional practices the truth of anicca, dukkha, anatta, the truth of the Buddha's teachings, that there's suffering, a cause of suffering, an end of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering, and the truth behind the results of the practice of keeping those moral virtues, of developing through meditation wisdom, then you are practicing those devotional practices free from rites and rituals. You're not treating them just as actions themselves to bring you good luck. That's superstition, that's rites and rituals. This idea has to be abandoned because it's a tie. It's a tie to a routine, a practice. If you felt uncomfortable at any time because you don't have your Buddha Rupa to bow to, or you don't have your particular mala to hold, and it holds you back, this is an attachment to a rite and ritual. It's just as we said, a not real thing, but for conventional sakes we're saying they are real things. But that is rites and rituals. When you accept that when they're there it's handy because they're good practical reminders, that's good. But when they're not there, it's okay, because the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha is what you have taken refuge in. The teacher, the teachings and the teachers now that are continuing in the way the Buddha taught them to live, to show us an example of, or an alternative way of existing, but also living in a compatible way with lay people, that those lay people can benefit from those individuals, as in monks and nuns, practices. Not only their devotional practices in the ceremonies that they perform with the lay people, but also in the example they're setting and showing that you need very little to live a comfortable life and to become content and happy. So even without renouncing everything yourselves as lay people, you can support monks whom are doing that to your own benefit, not by some magical mystical method or way of transmission, but by through sheerly practical means. If you feed me, I survive. If nobody feeds me, I don't. If nobody feeds any of the monks, they don't survive. There will be no monks in the future, or nuns. Whereas you maintain a commitment to, through generosity, support monks and nuns all over the world, and that keeps the Buddha Sasana, the religion, alive and present in people's minds. Yes, I might have said too much for this, because there's a lot of questions here. So how long, when you're asking how long, it's like how long is a piece of string. Of course, we are all different, so we don't know how long it will be. It depends on not the length of time, it's about quality, not quantity. So some people can become very enlightened, or in the Buddha's time, if you read the suttas, you'll hear of people becoming arahants almost instantly after hearing a teaching of the Buddha. Well, they had put in place in previous lives causes and conditions that put them in that position to be taught directly from the Buddha in the first place, but have also built up parami, the 10 parami of generosity, patience, equanimity, mindfulness, samadhi, meditation, all of these aspects, truthfulness, faith, in the 10 parami, qualities of inner qualities they'd built up through their practicing over many, many lifetimes. They had come to fruition, they'd come to that time already. So it just took a little reminder from the Buddha directly in his words to enable them to become arahants. But for most of us it takes a lot longer, because we maybe have not developed all of those paramis. Some things we might be considered ourselves as find it very easy to give, find ourselves as very generous people. We might find it very easy to renounce things and be very good at becoming renunciants. We might be very honest. We might have specially strengths in different areas. But if you look at the 10 paramis, I haven't given you the whole list here, but if you can Wikipedia that one on Google, I'm sure. But if you look at them, you'll see that you have some strengths and some weaknesses. Now work on what you'll have weaknesses in. Don't just go for the easy options. And then you're starting to bring all of the parami together. And this speeds up the process of enlightenment when the time is ready for that to happen, which is as a result of your practice of sila, samadhi, panya. So then you go on to ask, I've tried, did it crush you at once? Or didn't it crush you at once? Well, let's assume for the purposes of this question I'm not an arahant or an enlightened being, and I haven't been crushed. And I don't think when you are, that you get crushed. I think I know what you mean, that once you've let go of all of those desires, well, what's the point in living? Well, there isn't. But you continue to live because you become a monk. Certainly when you become an arahant, you would not continue in lay life. It's not practically possible. Because you wouldn't have the need to do all of the things one does in lay life. So you would just simply retire to a monastery, wear the robes and live out your days. And you can choose to teach or not. You possibly will want to teach and share what your experiences have been, because this is continuing with the parami of giving, dana, generosity. So you're not crushed. It doesn't mean... I understand what you're saying. It's not literally crushed. It's yes, you know, I think. I tried becoming vegetarian and eating only before noon, and I found it really challenging. Is that the only way not to become too entrenched on your ego? Okay, so these are some extra renunciation practices. One doesn't need to be a vegetarian to be a Buddhist or a monk, and as a lay person you don't have to not eat after noon, as I just explained with the precepts. That is just for people living in a monastery. So this isn't necessary and shouldn't get in the way of your practice. As long as you're keeping Sila, the 5 precepts, as long as you are practicing meditation, you will develop wisdom and awakening, Panya. So those aren't necessary. And if you want to do them and try them, it's good practice, so do so. But if they're getting in the way of your practice, then leave them alone for a while and maybe try again another time. Living like a monk seems a real high bar for myself, and most, I'm sure, because it is. It's not so much a high bar; it's a long way. It's a huge departure from a layperson's life. You're giving up your entire life. It's not just it's not a game. You really are giving up everything. All that I have of my former life is my given name in my passport and my passport, really. Nothing else. I still have my family, but I don't have much to do with them, really. I speak to my mother once in a while, not often. But even my children, and I now have a grandchild, I rarely speak to, unless there's a practical reason to do so. Yes, it's a high bar, which is why the Buddha put this wonderful fourfold assembly in place. We have laymen, lay women, that's upasakas and upasikas, monks and nuns, that's bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. Take your choice. You don't have to become a monk. There have been as many, in fact there have been more arahants from lay life than from monastic life, because there are considerably more lay people than there are monastics. That's just a numbers thing. But it is quite possible, by that understanding, to become an arahant in lay life if you keep the 5 precepts, if you practice meditation. This is developing wholesome mind states and reducing those unwholesome mind states, wisdom. So you don't have to become a monk or a nun. My question is, how long until you get a mind shift that makes it all easier? Again, how long is a piece of string? I think I might have answered that in the course of the last question. And if you get sick, how do you get health care? So personally, myself, I mean, what happens in a monastery? Any sick monks, we look after them as monks. Before I came here, the monastery where I was in Thailand was only helping to look after a sick monk who'd come there to be sick and be looked after. It was a nice quiet monastery by the sea, good air, and he was very ill and needed a lot of looking after. So the 3 monks, that was including myself and the samanera that were there, so 4 of us took it in turns to sit with him, do everything for him and look after him. That is how it traditionally works. As a travelling monk, me personally, I have to have various insurances in place so that if I was to become very ill, well, I don't have to, but some countries require it of you if you're going to stay there for a long time. So I do have in place, out of my own responsibility, prior to my ordination, I put in place available funds that would become available in such an emergency, and appointed various trustees to carry out those actions. So even if I was to die, if it was necessary, as it is sometimes, for your body to be repatriated, sent back to its country of origin, even though it's dead, it seems pointless, but it's a legal requirement. Certainly here in India, they won't bury you. They insist you're sent back to wherever you came from, unless you go through a lot of trouble to make arrangements. In fact, even if you're not dead, they keep trying to send you back to the country where you came from. So heaven knows when you're dead, it's going to be straight on a plane, isn't it? But anyway, I've put in place a trust fund and trustees to take care of those such events. So also, if I became very ill and needed to go to hospital and there were hospital bills, like an insurance plan, there is that for me to fall back on. So it's not fun, it's not money I can access or use other than for those purposes. But it's a good question. Okay, thank you for those questions. There were a few there which were very interesting. Well, I hope you found them interesting. I find it interesting answering them because I'm reflecting on this lifestyle again, and it should be reflected upon. In now chanting, the monks, the nuns, the bhikkhus, the bhikkhunis, we reflect on the monastic life in terms of our requisites, the use of those requisites, what we give up, the renunciation, the practice. It's a continual process of reflection. And you too, as lay people, should always be reflecting each and every day. I should remind you more often, I always forget, but such an important part of practice is not just the meditation, but at least once a day in the evening, before your meditation, reflect on the day that's just gone by. Have you kept sila? Have you practiced meditation? Have you worked on developing wholesome mind states, reducing unwholesome mind states? Reflect on this, if nothing else. But just the day. How did you react to this? How did you react to that? Were you kind to this person? Were you unkind to that person? Ask yourself. Reflect. Just for a short while. Clear the decks. Tidy up your mind before you sit for your final meditation in the evening. It's such a useful, practical thing to do. You'll see the benefits immediately also. Oh, this is kind of along the same lines. Thank you for this video. How long does it generally take to get the first jhana if, say, you're meditating for 2 hours a day? How long is a piece of string? I'm not sure where that phrase comes from because you could... Anyway. How long is it? We don't know. This is it's quality, not quantity. If you're meditating for 2 hours a day, then as long as it's good meditation, then you are practicing meditation. The more you meditate, the more, if you aren't attaining to jhanas in your meditation already, then you need to be meditating more, put it that way. Or at least if you're meditating and you're sitting there just dreaming and thinking about the future or the past or fantasizing rather than really maintaining mindfulness on your meditation object, then this is something you can reflect upon in that daily reflection. How is my meditation going? What am I doing with that time that I'm spending in meditation? It's about quality, not quantity. So it's not how long to attain to jhanas, it's what you need to do, the quality of the meditation, but also the causes and conditions you put in place surrounding that. You need to be really keeping sila. If you're not keeping the precepts, there are additional hindrances. We have 5 hindrances: sensual desire, ill will, laziness, restlessness and worry, and doubt, which are heightened considerably, magnified considerably if you break or if you're not keeping any of the individual 5 precepts or breaking any of the precepts. You will have more hindrances to developing absorption in samadhi, which is what's needed to lead to reaching jhana. But to get to first jhana, if you're keeping 5 precepts and you're meditating 2 hours a day, just keeping mindfulness on your awareness on your meditation object, and you're keeping mindfulness throughout all of your daily activities, there's no reason why you shouldn't be attaining to that first jhana already. And if you're not, you can very easily identify why you're not. It is either because you're not keeping 5 precepts, or when you're meditating you are not keeping your attention just on the meditation object only, your mind is wandering still, you're subject to the 5 hindrances, in which case work on them one by one. Take sensual desire, take ill will, or take laziness, take them individually and use the antidotes for them to examine firstly, understand where it's coming from, and eradicate their cause. Get rid of those hindrances and then you will get there. So it shouldn't take long, it doesn't need to take long. If you have any more questions about that, what I've just said, please ask more questions about that, what I've just said, because this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to attain deep levels of samadhi, jhanas, and practice meditation that benefits us, not just to become relaxed and chilled at the end of the day. You can do all sorts of things to achieve that. Watch a video, have a can of beer, you know. If you want to really attain to superior states of contentment and happiness, then you need to be practicing meditation and developing these wonderful stages of deep absorbed samadhi and jhanas. So someone's asked that I can post a daily meditation session. Now, the reason I haven't done so much of that is it's not very practical to do so usually, because it requires stable internet and a place to not only sit and meditate myself, which is easy to find, I can do that anywhere, but to find a position for a camera and to have it all, the phone, it kind of interferes with my own practice. I'm also not overly keen, or I don't use guided meditation myself. I think it's better that one just sits and develops. You see, meditation is about going inside. It's not about watching or listening. There are plenty of guided meditations. I've done loads. There's a whole playlist of guided meditations on here already on this channel, and I will do more. But I'm not going to do a daily practice of that, a 15-minute guided meditation. Personally, I think that's pointless. That's not meditation. That's a rote going through a routine. You're not going to develop jhanas in a 15-minute guided meditation. You should spend some time alone, sitting, watching the breath, practicing meditation, not checking your phone, going on YouTube. That should be done prior to meditation. Get the basis of what you should be doing. Now, of course, it is useful in some circumstances, and which is why I have done some, and I will continue to do some. But if you really need a regular daily thing like that, you can find them. There are plenty on YouTube already, with people who have studios and such like, and monasteries to do this kind of thing. For me, wandering around, it's not practical for me to do so. It would interrupt my own practice. Whereas these talks don't interfere or interrupt my day at all. It takes about an hour at the most to sit and talk to you like this, and then an hour at the most to just deal with the comments, respond to the comments and emails that I receive. So it doesn't take much out of my day. And I've only been doing it 5 days a week. So you see the weekends, or conventional weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, I don't do this. Now that's because I find nowadays people are usually available. So might come to see you. So it means I'm available for them if they do so. And it also gives me a break from the routine of doing it every day. So I'll probably continue with that structure from now on, Monday to Friday talks, including questions and answers. But occasionally there will be little extras, especially when I'm travelling, because things will come along which are Dharma appropriate to discuss, and I'll hopefully, if I'm able to, be able to share those things with you also. But I appreciate your suggestion, and I know you're coming from a good place and what you are looking for, but maybe look at search guided meditations, you'll find more, or watch mine over and over again. I've done some very different kinds, so you could find maybe something amongst the ones I have already put on here under guided meditations. Find one that you find that helps you, and it doesn't matter if you listen to the same one over and over again. That's more appropriate. It's not supposed to be exciting. It's finding a system, a way of you developing absorption. In fact, to a stage whereby you can't even hear or know about the guided meditation going on because you are meditating. It's just helped you get there. So listen to the ones I've done and try them out, and then just repeat the one you like over and over again. let's just check, excuse me. Sorry. Okay, so I think I've got time for one more question. Excuse me, I'm being cheating a little bit because I was just seeing a couple of very long ones which I was flicking through, not because they're long questions, but it's not very easy to read this small writing on this screen out here, or anywhere really, for me, but I have a tendency to drift off hold. Okay, so I'm trying to find a question now. Oh, okay, this is quite interesting. Greetings, Phra Dan. Thanks for all the enlightening videos. Oh, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure. Always looking forward to listening to your talk. Good. Is getting passive income from investments, for example, foreign exchange, a good livelihood way of earning money? Okay, coming from that background myself, financial services that is, FOREX trading, foreign exchange, is by no means a passive income, firstly. So if anyone's told you that, then you're going to lose all your money. It's a very active way of trading on financial markets, but I understand what you're saying. It's not directly working, it's living off, you're living off gambling. Now, there is no rule against gambling in Theravada Buddhism. It doesn't come under wrong livelihood, as long as you're not doing anyone any harm and you're using money you can afford to lose. But I did this for a living. I traded not Forex trading. That's why I say it's not a passive income, it's very active. You need to be continually trading and watching the markets. Whereas if you put some money, invest some money in a company that is, assume it's an ethical company, in case people want to start a big conversation thread up saying, oh, but what if it's an unethical company? We can check these things out very easily these days. So you've got a blue chip, ethical company, you put a whole lot of money in and the company does well and you receive dividends. Yes, that is right livelihood. Nothing wrong with that at all. It is still, to some extent, a gamble because that company may not provide any returns. It may go bankrupt and you lose all your money. So this is why it's always a gamble. So anyone telling you it's not gambling is lying to you. All trading on financial markets, whatever strategies you have in place, is gambling, because you can have strategies in gambling too. But if you fully underwrite your trading practices in a way that there is no risk, then you will make no return. So therefore there always has to be an element of gamble in any trade you make. Now one could say, well, it's a gamble to wake up in the morning. That's what I used to say when people used to say, you're just gambling for a living. Before I would openly, I could pluck up the courage to say yes, but I'm good at it. I used to say, yes, but you're gambling that you might wake up in the morning, walk across the road and get run over on your way to the office. That's daft. I mean, the fact of the matter is financial trading provides gains and it provides losses. So it is gambling. But in Theravada Buddhism, gambling, like in some religions and in some traditions of Buddhism, isn't prohibited specifically. It's not one of the precepts. It's not even in the, well, it is in the Vinaya, because monks aren't allowed to use money. So of course monks can't do any of this. We can't have, however, if we had already got investments in place before we became monks and they were no longer accessible, like a trust fund, for instance, that may have investments in shares, or a pension that may have investments in shares in companies, as long as we have nothing to do with that, we're not receiving the losses or the gains, and we've walked away from all responsibility, as in a trust run by trustees, then we're not partaking in any of that activity using money. So we're not breaking that 10th precept. So for a layperson, yeah, it's okay, but knowing that there's many people in this country, in India, moving through spread betting platforms online, moving into these financial trading games, I will say they're games. It's a relatively new thing over here. Mark my words, in the West, it's a very, very old thing. I was doing what you're doing now 30 years ago, when it first became something that people did, when it was first not fashionable, before it became fashionable, when you could seriously make money at it. So don't be fooled. Don't think it's new, don't think it's big, don't think it's clever. If you can make money at it through sensible strategies, it's hard work and you're making money. It's just another way of making a living. If you think you're making a lot of money suddenly, and you think for some reason that's unethical, then only you know. The chances are what's happening there is you're just getting lucky, and that luck will soon run out and you'll lose whatever you're making. So sorry to put a downer on it if I have in that respect, but I'm reading between the lines a little bit about the question you're sending me, because I do get that question a lot. How do you deal with temptations? Have I answered that one? No, I don't think so. So I think that if I make that the last question, firstly, by guarding the sense doors. So we have these windows to the outside world of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Hiri and Ottappa are our bodyguards. Our wise sense of doing wrong, and our wise sense of the results of what will happen if I do wrong. So two things, we call those Hiri and Ottappa. A wise sense of doing wrong and a wise sense of what will happen if I do wrong. Vipaka, the results of karma and action. So any actions of body, speech and mind that we do wrong will have their results that will not be good. So this is how we guard our sense doors of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. So how do we, how do you word the question? Deal with temptation. Firstly, we guard those sense doors. Our guards are Hiri and Ottappa, our wisdom. That if we go around looking at things, say we have a tendency to want to drink alcohol and we're trying not to drink alcohol. If you go and stand outside a pub or a bar or a shop that sells alcohol all day long staring at it, it's only going to tempt you to want to go in there and buy some and have some. The way to avoid that, firstly, is to avoid those places. Now, this isn't suppressing the desire. The desire is still there. You need to know the desire is still there and see that, recognize that as a desire to drink some alcohol. But don't put yourself in a situation whereby you're vulnerable. You guard those sense doors. Eventually, you will build up through replacing that desire with the benefits of the practice of keeping sila, of meditation, and of developing the wholesome mind states rather than these unwholesome mind states. By developing those whilst you're guarding those sense doors from that temptation, you develop the strength so that when you can go out and face all temptations, it no longer affects you. You're equanimous. This is why monks have to stay, we have to stay in the monastery for 5 years before we're allowed to go outside, because we're not ready. We need to guard all of our sense doors from all temptation, from ladies in the case of monks, men in the case of nuns or whatever, and through food, sensual desire, entertainment, all of the things that are going on outside in the high street. If we go out there on day one, walking in the nighttime party atmosphere of the city, as after the day after we've ordained, the chances of us staying in the robes for very long is very slim, because there's temptation all around us and we're not guarding our sense doors. So for first 5 years we guard those sense doors very literally by staying within the grounds, the walls of the monastery, only going outside on alms round in the morning only to collect our food once a day, and we have to have special permission to go in the afternoon. Only after this time of training and developing sila, samadhi, panya, are we then free to go out into the wide world and experience with equanimity upekkha, all the goings on, but be unwavered by it, not have to be tempted, react to it. Respond to something, but not react to something. So something we like, and we know we're not supposed to have, we can say there's the feeling of liking, and we can walk away, rather than having to have it just because it's there. Oh, well, I couldn't help it, it was there, it was too tempting. So how do we deal with temptation? That's how we deal with it as monks. As lay people, how you deal with temptation is the same way. You don't put yourself in the way of temptation. After all, temptation is exactly that. It is temptation. It's the meaning of the word, being tempted to have something, usually negative to your development of wholesome mind states. It comes from the result of unwholesome mind states, wanting, desire, but tanha, thirst, craving, not chanda, wholesome desire, tanha, unwholesome desire, craving for something that we will feel give us immediate, instant gratification. When we realize the impermanence of that gratification through our practice of sila, samadhi, panya, anicca, dukkha, anatta, we understand that it's impermanent. It just causes us suffering when we have run out or we can't get any more. And that is out of our control. That we're out of control. So we don't put ourselves in the way of temptation. So you don't suppress the feeling, but you avoid the stimulation. So don't be looking at the wrong kinds of media that is available to you if it's something that you're trying to reduce in your activity. Don't look at stimulants to that activity. Look at alternative things. Guard the sense doors with hiri and ottappa. This is what we do. This is how we deal with temptation. So I hope that's useful somewhere amongst those comments and questions and what I've talked about today. And I thank you for watching. If it's useful, please use it. If not, just let it go. And I will hopefully, all things being well, speak to you again very soon in the early part of this coming week, when I'll have a different background, be in a different culture, a different environment, and maybe there might be something to share with you on the way. But if not, I will see you, as they say, on the other side, subject to anicca, dukkha, anatta, of course, in which case there's plenty of videos here for you to go back and watch from the beginning if I don't make it to the other side. So many blessings to you with metta. Sukhi hotu, sukhi hotu, sukhi hotu.